Askar, thank you very much for joining us today. I hope all is well.
Yes, hi James. It's likewise for me. I'm happy to see you. We're very happy to be back to our traditional conversations.
Thank you. Askar, Kazatomprom is the world's largest uranium producer, producing approximately 25% of the world's production. And given the current geopolitical situation between Russia and the Ukraine, there's been a lot of information and rumors disseminated about Kazatomprom and your production capabilities. So I thought it would be a good time to sit down with you and clarify fact from fiction by covering a few topics. And before we do that, I want to provide an agenda on what I want to discuss, beginning with Kazatomprom's relationship with Uranium One, the impact of secondary sanctions, the impact of the Russian ruble, transportation issues with exporting uranium, Russian removal from SWIFT, supply chain issues, and I want to conclude with what shareholders can expect in terms of news flow from Kazatomprom in the coming weeks. Askar, Kazatomprom was down 30% on the year, and though the stock has had a nice rally in the last few days, at the same time, many stocks within your sector are up 10, 20% or more. And one of the main reasons that Kazatomprom is underperforming is because of this information or misinformation in the markets about your operations and your JVs with your Russian partner, Uranium One. And so why don't we just start right there with a better understanding of your JV relationships?
Thanks, James. I'll maybe start with a little bit comment on the part of your agenda that you've also mentioned. I mean, starting from the beginning of this year, we have seen some events that were driving concerns around energy security in global. So, as you said, we were experiencing those tragic events in Kazakhstan in early January. That was followed by the state of emergency in Canada caused by convoy protests and the now situation in Ukraine. These events, no doubt, had an effect on uranium prices and on the nuclear industry in general. However, Kazakhstan's location near Russia and recent tragic events in January in Kazakhstan both led to a perception of a higher risk-related sanctions and Russian influence in our part of the world. It has created a risk of scenario for foreign investors who have been shifting capital to uranium producing jurisdictions like Canada, US, Australia, which may be viewed as a lower risk and could benefit from the current political situation. It's kind of an uphill battle working with the market to reconsider the geopolitical risks in general and the current political climate. But in our view, Kazatomprom shares have already been discounted for those risks compared to our peers and competitors. And now this further dip resulting from the current events has created a situation where we really appear to be oversold. So that's the part for the agenda, and kind of straightly going to our relationship with Uranium One, I can kind of say that Kazatomprom and Rosatom cooperate generally under such kind of called a comprehensive program of Kazakhstan and Russian cooperation in the field of nuclear energy. And under that program, we have a number of joint ventures that were established in mining and in enrichment sector. So in mining, we have joint venture SMCC, where Uranium One has 70%. We have Karatau and Agbastau, the two big mines, where we are kind of peers, having 50-50 for Uranium One and Kazatomprom. We have JV Zarechnoye, where Uranium One is slightly less than 50%, and Kharasan U, where Uranium One share is 30%. So that's are the kind of mining joint ventures who are mining uranium independently, and then both parties marketing it with corresponding discount to Kazatomprom and Russian shareholder. We also maintain in the enrichment sector, we also maintain a single share in uranium enrichment center that gives us an exposure and kind of access to enrichment services in Russia, if customers require it and if we are to use it for our fuel assembly project. As well, we have a stake of 10% in International Uranium Enrichment Center, where we have other participants like International Ukrainian Enrichment Center and Nuclear Fuel State Concern of Ukraine, who is presenting that Ukrainian part, and Armenian Nuclear Power Plant. So all three parties, ourselves, Ukraine, and Armenia, owns by 10%, and 70% is with Russian's Rosatom State Corporation. So that's kind of the summary of our relationship with Uranium One and Rosatom group in general.
Askar, companies from around the world are pulling out of Russia, and Western governments have implemented many economic sanctions against Russia. So far, the energy sector has not been included, but there's been a lot of concern surrounding secondary sanctions against Kazatomprom. Can you help us understand what options you might have or take to mitigate this risk if it does happen?
Yes, James. I mean, very frequent, very interesting question. Well, secondary sanctions are imposed by kind of the Office of Foreign Assets Control and U.S. Treasury Department, and they are intended to prevent third parties from trading with countries that are subject to those sanctions. So penalties for non-compliance with secondary sanctions could be a ban on doing business with the country issuing the primary sanction, or a restriction of an access to issuing country's financial system. So obviously, this is something we would work to avoid at all costs. So Rosatom's ownership of 50% or more, we have an interest only in SMCC joint venture and Karatau and Agbastau, and kind of our, of course, shares in Uranium Enrichment Center and International Uranium Enrichment Center. So these are the companies that do represent the risk of those indirect secondary sanctions towards Kazatomprom. So work to address that possibility is ongoing, with plans in place to mitigate the risk, and kind of we work with our partner to restructure if needed to avoid any such sanctions if they are to be imposed. So in the most severe sanction situation, I mean, the Russian central bank could also be prevented from any transactions in other currencies, which actually could impact the business activity between Rosatom and its joint ventures. So if that would be required, we could involve our majority shareholder Samruk Kazina and even Kazakh government in such discussions, as it would obviously be in everyone's best interest to avoid any such impacts.
So just to clarify, the secondary sanctions would only apply to those assets that you have a JV with Uranium One?
Absolutely, and where we have participation in enrichment on the territory of Russian Federation.
And approximately what % of your production would be affiliated with this JV agreement?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, around maybe 20% of our production could be affiliated there. But again, depends on how severe would be sanctions, what would they involve, and what consequence will be there. I mean, will depend on what countermeasures we would be taking.
I want to move on now and discuss foreign exchange risk. The Russian ruble has been decimated in the last few weeks, and because of Kazakhstan's relationship with the Russian economy, the Kazakhstani tenge has also weakened significantly, falling anywhere from 15 to 20%. Has this move in your currency had a negative impact on your operations or your financials?
Well, the impact of changes in USD to tenge exchange rates is kind of one of the factors that affect our financial results for sure. I mean, most of our revenues are denominated in US dollars, while our significant share cost is kind of including operations, production, capexes, so they're tenge denominated. So kind of we are generally kind of benefiting from the weakness of tenge, which subsequently has a positive effect on our financial performance. Whilst kind of I would say that this is maybe a more near-term benefit to our already lowest cost. So we have to acknowledge that this current weakness is not the similar that we have been experiencing before. So this current one has a high potential to result in significant lasting inflation, which we would eventually catch up with us down the road if the currency remains under pressure.
I want to move on now and discuss transportation. In your annual report, it's indicated that all material delivered outside of Russia and China is shipped through the port of St. Petersburg in Russia. If you can't get material out of St. Pete's due to sanctions or limited shipping options, etc., how will you ship uranium to your customers in the West?
Very good question, James. First of all, just kind of small clarification on this part. I mean, we are not yet able to disclose our financials of 2021. They are to be announced on March 16th. But in terms of 2020, I mean, the allocation for West and China kind of is almost 50 or slightly more than 50% of our deliveries are done to China, and the rest is done to West, including kind of Europe and kind of US, Canada. Europe is also including some deliveries to Russia. So if we have to consider the deliveries that we have to carry to Western converters, they are less than 50% of our attributable sales. So in that sense, kind of we're not kind of considering the huge big deliveries that we have to move. Yes, so the large portion, a little bit less than 50%, we are historically been moving through the port of St. Petersburg because it's well-established route which we have been using for more than 20 years. And I would like to kind of point out that to date, transit of Class 7 material has not been affected at all. So we are, as Kazatomprom, we never lose title of the product. So we are owners of the product through the whole way of the transit up to the time when it's being delivered to converter. And when the book transfer is made, only at that time we are kind of transferring the title. So as long as we are the owners of the material, it has no effect to be under any kind of sanctions. Considering the kind of other part, if we will go to kind of conditions where the sanctions might be imposed on the transit part, I mean, first of all, again, I would like to say that Kazatomprom does not have any relationship with any companies that are kind of subject to FAC or other countries' sanctions at this time. So primarily the route, kind of the normal route of St. Petersburg is being used as usual. So however, we fully appreciate the increasing risk. We understand, and from 2018 we have been developing an alternative route that completely exclude Russian territory. So this is a kind of Trans-Caspian international transport route which goes through Caspian and Black Sea. We have been using it from 2018. We've done several shipments from that time every year. So if we are to use that route, we are ready. That route is developed. We have all possibilities to do that as well. In case something is also with this route, we have so-called swap deals that we can be using. These are location swaps that we can be doing with Chinese counterparties, so delivering to Chinese border, receiving the that quantities at the Western converters, and at the same time we have a 6 to 7 month attributable production as an inventory, which is also relocated into the different kind of places in Kazakhstan and on the Western converters. So this is the action plan that we have to kind of mitigate all the risks related with any disruptions on the kind of on those routes.
And just to clarify, at this point, everything is still going through St. Petersburg.
Absolutely. Again, we are not disrupted at the moment. Everything is moving. This is a transit transportations which are not affected by the current situation. So we're using the same route. We're using it as usual. But again, we are ready to start any of our kind of risk plans if that's to be done, I mean, by ourselves.
There's a lot of concern that Russia and certain banks which have access to the SWIFT system or the SWIFT system will be cut off. And if this were to happen to your Russian JV partner, Uranium One, and they were not able to access this system, what impact would this have on your JV partners? And would they still be able to buy their share of production? And would they be able to pay for or pay Kazatomprom for those purchases?
Very good question. Well, you know, some Kazatomprom subsidiaries have a long-term reclamation deposits with the Russian banks that were sanctioned. So, however, Kazatomprom immediately undertook a required process to sever the relationship and fully withdraw those deposits and expect to avoid any secondary sanction on that part. Kind of also, we have next to no exposure to rubles and have an alternative financial transaction systems and currencies available to work with our JV partners. Well, if that's needed, I mean, if we need to change the currency or change the system, so that's all in place. And I guess that Rosatom will use those kind of systems to work with their JV partners.
I want to move on and discuss supply chains. The last time we spoke, you mentioned that you were having issues securing certain products and materials needed to operate your business. Has the current situation between Russia and the Ukraine exacerbated this, or have you been able to effectively manage your supply chain risk?
Well, absolutely. I mean, those challenges did not go away from last year. Our production and procurement teams have sourced material from other suppliers, which is expected to result kind of in some cost pressure. But again, I can't say much now about this as that will come up in our final year results in March 16th. So after that, we could be talking about this. What I can say is that we still see the supply chain as a significant risk. The expected minus 20% production levels previously expected for 2022, according to our subsoil use contracts, were about to be the similar as in 2021, and kind of we're expecting under subsoil use contracts, the figure is kind of 22.8 thousand tons. But as you have seen in our trading update, our 2022 production guidance is already expected to be between 21,000 and 22,000 tons, which is less than kind of subsoil use agreements. So not only kind of the top end of our expected production is a bit lower due to the delays in development works associated with the lack of the access to all required materials, but we are also expanding the low end of that range to 21,000 to account the kind of increased downside risk of our production. And further, we go in 2022 and update our guidance each quarter. You can expect that we will be now narrowing that range of 1,000 tons as we gain more confidence and kind of we know what exactly we're going to be able to achieve in terms of production in the kind of current environment that we have.
You recently press released that your chief operating officer has resigned, and there's been significant turnover in this position in the last few years. Can you give us a little bit of color on this as why he did resign?
Yeah, I mean, yes, that was kind of unexpected decision, and it naturally leads to concerns about underlying operations issues. But I've spoken to him personally. He's a kind of top professional, good guy with a great international experience. And I mean, losing him was very unlucky for us. But as I spoke to him, he completely assured that this is his personal decision and kind of he's going to pursue some other options available for him and options that he has. So yes, again, we are kind of finding ourselves looking to fill that important role of working with partners, leading operations through the period of post-pandemic recovery with an increased cost pressures that we have. So we're looking both within outside and inside of our organization for new talent and the leadership. So our people have proven that they can handle some of the most complex and challenging missions that this industry and the world around us has thrown to us. So we're expecting to have a newcomer with a lot of dedication and being ready to solve all the pressures and problems that we're kind of seeing right now.
Askar, before we wrap it up, is there anything else you would like to communicate to the market that you think the market might not properly understand in this current environment?
Well, we'll be releasing our full year 2021 results on Wednesday next week. And the following day, on March 16th, we will be holding a conference call. So we invite all investors, all concerned parties, or all stakeholders to join that call and hear from our CEO and from our management team. Beyond that, we are going to have our AGM that will be coming in May, where shareholders will review the board's upcoming recommendation for 2020 dividend and on 2021 result. Apart from this, we are going to work within very unique and not usual circumstances. So, I mean, we should be ready to see some very creative approach from Kazatomprom in terms of sales, deliveries, and fulfilling our commitments. But again, I would like to assure all our customers that what we are promising to deliver, we always deliver.
Well said. Askar, that was a great overview of Kazatomprom, and I want to thank you for spending time with us today and clarifying many of the issues that we discussed. To all of our viewers, if we were not able to address your questions during this discussion, please send us an email to info@bloorstreetcapital.com. We'll make sure you get an answer to your questions. Once again, Askar, thank you.
Thank you, James. Next time, I hope to see you face to face.